I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind.
Hey, quick question.
I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe, this how you get out.
Game 4. Do you guys know what Anthony Edwards said about it being a real tough game?
No.
Well, Anthony Edwards said when things get hard.
Oh, Canada.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
You're muted. You're muted, Tone.
Crazy. My mic's on.
Now your mic's on. Now your mic's off. Now you're good.
Now I'm good, right?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
All right. Well,
you are in effect.
Well, it's December 3rd. Let's get into this day in NBA history. December 3rd, 1946. Joe Fulks sets a record at the time, 37 points on only 50 field goal attempts. The record did stand for both field goal attempts for 13 years. Any thoughts on Joe Fulks and his 37 points off 50 points in off 50 shot attempts in 1946?
I'm 100% confident his plus minus would be awful.
Sounds
sure.
like LaMelo Ball the last 4 or 5 games.
Sounds like LaMelo. Sounds like me every Friday night. So I'm good. I'm good with Joe.
There we go. Well, that was this day in NBA history.
I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind. I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe, is how you get outline.
All righty. Let's do it. Your mic is muted again, Tone. There you go.
I don't know why his mic keeps getting muted.
Yeah,
He just keeps doing it for some reason. But I'm really excited for our guest today. We have the creator of Basketball Reference, a site that I've been on daily, except in times of my incarceration. But other than that, daily, for about the last 16 years, something like that. So thank you for coming on, Justin. Really appreciate it. Can I ask you about, before we get into all that, can we get like a little bit of background about you, your sports, your mathematics, just, how you got into that?
Yeah, I don't know how deep in the weeds you want me to get, but just in terms of my education, I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in applied statistics. Kind of bounced around, doing a lot of different things before I settled into a career that was centered around sports. I was a high school math teacher at one point. Did that for 2 years. That was all I needed to get the motivation to go to graduate school and not do high school teaching for the rest of my life. Then I just did various other things. I did some direct marketing analysis. I was doing some biostatistics for a while. I taught college courses for 7 years, and just kind of during that whole process stumbled into making a career out of sports and sports analytics.
Were you always like, did you watch sports? Were you always into sports? Like, so was it a natural progression? Or
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know, probably like the earliest sports memories I have would be, so I grew up near Pittsburgh, would be the Steelers winning back-to-back Super Bowls over the Cowboys. Not back-to-back over the Cowboys. I guess it was one over the Cowboys and one over the Rams in 78, 79. And so, I've always been a sports fan. I like not just basketball, football. I was a big baseball fan for a while, not as much anymore.
Yeah, if you're forgetting who they beat, there's a cool site called Football Reference, and you can go. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
So Football
Reference. My ex, she was a mathematician like you, so I know how the mind of a mathematician works. So where did this whole thing start? Like, did you watch a ball game and you saw the numbers and you thought, wait a minute, okay, this isn't correct?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's see. It would have been in the 80s when Bill James started publishing his baseball abstracts, and in those books, he sort of countered a lot of the conventional wisdom that was around at that time and showed that, hey, these things that announcers or columnists frequently write or tell you over the air are not really accurate. And here's why. And so I think that kind of served as motivation to not just trust what I see on TV or read in a newspaper, but actually take a look at the numbers and see what kind of stories those have to tell. And math had always been my favorite subject because I like the sort of the absolute nature of it. Like an answer is correct or it's not. I was never a big fan of classes like English and social studies, where it was like, I felt at times like, whether or not you're right or wrong, it depends a lot on who's teaching the course. So
Right.
Bill James and his baseball abstracts were definitely something that pushed me along in terms of finding my path.
Sure.
I had referenced Pro Football Reference a second ago. So there was like a baseball reference, a football reference. Are you guys connected? Is it just you kind of build off one another? Is that kind of, was there a conversation with the baseball reference guy and you were like, hey, I want to do what you're doing for basketball?
So just what you said, basically. So Sean Foreman, who was the creator of Baseball Reference, still runs it. He still runs the company. But to be clear, too, I'm no longer a part of Sports Reference. But so I stopped working on the site years ago. Anyway, so he had done the Baseball Reference and it had become quite popular. And then shortly after that, a guy named Doug Drennan created Pro Football Reference. Oh, it's confusing, right? I think it was Football Reference for a while, then they had to switch to Pro Football. I think they got Football Reference back at this point. Anyway, so he had created Football Reference, and I had noticed that Sean had the domain name basketballreference.com reserved, and I thought, there's nothing really like this out there for the NBA right now. And I was a pretty big NBA fan. I was like, I'd really like something like this. Maybe I'll just create it. And so I contacted him just to see if he'd be okay with that, and that maybe we could sort of operate independently, but promote each other's sites. And so that's how. And what was interesting to do is all three of us at the time were college lecturers or college professors, so we were just sort of doing this on the side as a hobby, not really thinking it would turn into a career or anything. Just we wanted to create something cool for our respective sports, and we did it. And so what happened was the sites just ended up becoming incredibly popular. And so we merged under a single umbrella, called it Sports Reference. And I can't remember how quickly after we created the company that I just quit my full-time job and went full-time into Sports Reference, but it didn't take long. And
so that's how we got all of that: Pro Football Reference, Baseball Reference, Basketball Reference, College Basketball all of that stuff. That's where all of this stuff comes from.
Exactly, correct.
Sure,
yep.
Absolutely. I can appreciate that. My question to you, when doing all of this stuff analytically, how did we get here? Because what I found out, because me playing basketball in the years that I played, you would phase me out of the game because I was a mid-range merchant, just so you know. I played in the mid-range. So you would actually get rid of me because of you. I would be useless now.
We still got guys like DeMar DeRozan playing.
That's what I'm saying. So how, because that's where I lived. I lived in the 15 to 18 foot range. So with that being said, analytically, how did we get here from a guy who can play on the block to a guy who can play in the mid-range to now we got guys playing 22, 24 feet away from the basket? How did we get there?
I think it's just a pretty basic mathematical truth. 3 is greater than 2.
3 is greater than 2. Yes, they are.
And okay, that's you're a mid-range guy who can hit 45% of your shots, let's say. Okay, well, I'm going to play the 3-point shooter who can hit a third of his shots because that's going to create more points for my team. And if you're gonna rely on the mid-range game nowadays, I think you have to be really efficient at that. And there are a few guys who can still do that. But if you're talking about a difference of a few feet, meaning a difference in 50% more points, okay, well, you'll sacrifice some accuracy, in order to get more points out of the deal, right? I think that's as simple as it gets.
I wish you were out 20 years earlier, because unlike him, I was a 3-point shooter. And if this would have been out and they would have started on the analytics, they would have loved me. But when you see, so from an analytics perspective, when you're watching the game, You're watching the game. Were you already kind of thinking about the numbers of the game, and do you get, people sometimes go into the analytics and they think that's all that matters. As the guy who created Basketball Reference, do you say, no, guys, the numbers are one thing, and I love numbers because they're absolute, but there's still another piece to every sport?
Oh no, yeah, definitely. I'm not a no numbers guy. I think it's part art and part science, right? And the things like advanced scouting and collegiate scouting and all those good things, they still matter. I think the thing is that, like with a computer, we can keep track of, let's say, college level, right? There's thousands upon thousands of games, and it's not possible to send human beings out there and be able to process everything that's going on. And so that's a case where, okay, if we have data on these players, that can maybe then help us sort of filter out guys that, okay, these are guys maybe we don't want to look at. These are guys that, hey, they're really interesting. Maybe they don't look good on video, but the numbers are saying that they produce a lot of wins for their team or whatever. But there's definitely, it needs to be sort of a mix, right? You cannot just rely on numbers for everything, because we've seen a lot of college players who put up tremendous numbers collegiately, and then it doesn't translate to the NBA. Like Jimmer Fredette would be one I can think of off the top of my head.
Thomas Robinson from Kansas. Sure.
Right.
Adam Morrison.
Right. And then there's also other cases, right, where it's like, okay, some guy in college who the scouts love, but he doesn't really produce the way you think a player with that ability should produce. And then come to the NBA and they're really, really good. So I think you need to rely on both. You can't just rely on one or the other.
Yeah, systems and opportunities, those types of things come into it. Tone, I know Tone always has a list of questions. So, anything?
Well, no. What I want to know is because I'm leaning more. I think it's about 2/3 the number and about 1/3 of the eye test. And the example I give is our eyes lie to us all the time. If you don't believe me, then why'd you get with your ex? You know what I mean? Our eyes lie to us all the time. I was talking to Rudy Tomjanovich about this once. He did analytics for a long time, and he agrees. I think another way to answer that is if you ask AI who the top 10 greatest players is, well, AI's never watched a game, and they're pretty much going to get the list pretty accurate. There'll be a little, flaws in here. And just to show you guys, I don't know if you could see that, but I write formulas for fun. You know what I mean? So anyways, I'm working on this thing that I want to do. I want to call it the conducive to winning stat, because I don't think people factor in, and I want to know what you think about this. We'll just use Kobe Bryant versus Bill Russell. There's no way you can tell me Kobe Bryant's stat line of 25, 5, and 5 is worth more than Bill Russell's 15, 23, and 8 blocks a game. You know what I mean? So have you found a pattern that's more conducive to winning that you don't think the masses are really understanding? No. You don't understand. You get me 23 rebounds. That's 23 possessions. The average possession is 1.2 points per possession. Times that by 23, that's 4.6 plus 20. That's an extra 28 points right there off your 23.
There's a lot to unpack there. I say, first of all, the lack of data from Russell's era makes things really hard, right? They didn't keep track of things like offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, steals, blocks, individual turnovers. They weren't tracking any of that stuff. Another thing to keep in mind about Russell's day is they played at an incredibly fast pace, much faster than we're seeing nowadays. And they didn't have the 3-point shot, but
60 years ago, even faster today, faster 60 years ago than today.
Yes, for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah. In terms of, I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but yeah, in terms of, if you're looking at field goals attempted per 48 minutes of gameplay, a lot higher especially in the early 60s. And so things like rebounds per game are obviously affected by that, because the field goal percentage, the league field goal percentage, was much worse back then. So it was easier for guys to rack up huge rebounding numbers because you had a ton of missed shots and they're playing at this sort of frenetic pace. Again, that just makes era-to-era comparisons really tricky.
Right.
Especially when you're talking about guys like Russell, Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, those guys where, again, you have a lack of data. You really have to make adjustments for the style of play that was common at that time. And
I ended up adjusting to pace for what Chamberlain did in the 61-62 season. I ended up adjusting to pace And if he was playing today at that pace, he would be 32, 16, and 6. And I'm thinking to myself, that sounds like Giannis.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
That sounds like Giannis Antetokounmpo today, a guy that's arguably the best player in the league.
And I recently did a post on my Substack, which is called Statitudes, STATITUDES. Just a plug, sorry. I was looking at rebounding rates and trying to figure out a way to compare players across eras. And when you do make adjustments for things, I mean, Rodman is pretty much the equal to Chamberlain and Russell in terms of his prowess on the boards. Now, of course, Rodman had severe offensive deficiencies, but that's just one thing, right? One area of the game, rebounding, where if you just make some fairly simple adjustments, you can see that there's quite a bit of air that needs to be let out of those numbers from the 60s.
You had mentioned that you're no longer with Sports Reference. So is Statitude what you're working on now, or is it other things? Statitude being one of those?
So I guess I'd say I'm in semi-retirement.
Okay.
I write first. Yeah, I mean, Statitudes is something I own and write for, and it's basically daily game notes that I put out, kind of summarizing the key things that happened from a statistical point of view the previous night. I am also a statistical consultant, so I have a couple side gigs that I do where I work for some people, maybe 10 hours a week on stuff, that issues that come up with their workplace and that could use data analysis. And then actually probably my main passion right now is I'm a high school cross country and track coach. And so that's what I'm doing now. Just kind of a little bit of everything, just trying to enjoy life. And
Justin, I gotta ask, because I've been trying to figure this out for the life of me. Justin, what is box plus minus?
So that they added that to the site after I left.
Okay, so you have nothing.
To be honest, I am not. I could probably try to explain what it is, but I'm probably wrong too in some ways. So I don't. But I think it's just using box score statistics to sort of generate a better plus minus for a player, as opposed to just like raw plus minus, which can be influenced by a lot of things, right? Who you're showing the court with, are you playing in garbage time versus non-garbage time, that sort of thing.
Right.
But in terms of like the nitty gritty, I don't think I could speak intelligently on that.
Because I have such a difficult time with box plus minus, because on the one hand, I'll have a guy that in true shooting is what I struggle with. I've never really been a big fan of true shooting, off the strength that a guy can go. Shooting. I'm not a fan of true shooting. A guy can go 8 for 24 or 8 for 25 from the floor and go 11 for 12 from the stripe, and that true shooting goes through the roof. And I'm thinking to myself, and he can end up having a plus as opposed to being a minus. I'm thinking to myself, he wasn't efficient at all. But the fact that he ended up going to the stripe and was efficient at the stripe, meanwhile he took a bunch of bad shots and missed a bunch of shots, it make it look like in the box score that he was efficient. I struggle with both of those.
Yeah, well,
but that's so go ahead.
I was gonna say, so true shooting. One of the things I don't like that they did with true shooting was, if really what it's measuring is points per scoring attempt. Okay, and they did this division by 2 to make it look like a field goal percentage or whatever. I think that was a mistake. I think they should have focused on, let's call this points per scoring attempt. Anyway, I think part of the reason it came about is people were undervaluing getting to the free throw line, making free throws. Like, that is a really valuable skill. Gets points for your team, puts the other team in foul trouble, that sort of thing. And I think there are players like a James Harden, for example, who can be somewhat inefficient from the field.
Sure.
And this is especially back in his Houston days, right? But was so good at drawing fouls and then successfully converting when he got to the foul line that it has a really positive impact on the team. So I get what you're saying. Like, it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around the fact that a guy goes 8 for 20, but he has a really high true shooting percentage. Well, if he went 8 for 20, but 14 for 14 from the free throw line, that's, in terms of points per scoring attempt, that's actually really, really good.
I guess my thing with true shooting is that I get it, because it's about efficiency in scoring. So it makes sense that a 3 is worth 150% and a 2 is worth 100, right? Because a 3 is 150% more than a 2. I get it. How the free throw becomes 113%, that math never jived with me. And I get it. They're trying, like you said, give some value to a guy who gets to the line. But that's the one, like, just those ones bother me. Where I can go 2 for 2 from the field and I'm 100%. But if I get fouled on both of those and I go 4 for 4, I'm 113%. Well, I've still scored the same amount of points. I've actually had to take more shots technically. And now I'm have a higher, I'm minimalizing it to make the math easy.
Right.
I'm not you. But you know what I mean? And now I'm 113% true shooting percentage. Well, no, I'm not. I wasn't more efficient than that other person. Sorry, Tony, you were jumping in there.
No, I want to know if you're only using these two metrics to judge what's a better player, because I'm an effective field goal percentage guy. I think that tells the story much better than true shooting. So if someone has a higher effective field goal percentage versus someone has a higher true shooting percentage, what do you think is the more accurate measure of how good that player is?
I don't think accurate's the right word, but if I had a choice of which one I'd want to know true shooting percentage. Because again, I think foul shooting, getting to the foul line, that's a really important skill. And if you're just looking at effective field goal percentage, you're completely leaving out that ability, right? So you're only looking at how successful am I at converting my opportunities from the field. And you might have two guys with the same effective field goal percentage, but if one is a guy who kind of just hangs out around the 3-point line, say like old reference here, like a Kyle Korver or somebody like that, right? Where he's not going to drive. He's not going to draw fouls versus a guy like, say, Harden again, right? Who is going to shoot threes, but he's also going to draw a ton of fouls and score a bunch of points at the foul line. Like I would have a problem saying that Korver, for example, is a more effective, more efficient, whatever offensive player than Harden. If I'm like, I wouldn't want to leave out the free throws out of that equation, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't think the free throws is the issue more than I feel like the game that we're playing is dangerous, because like you just said, a guy like Kyle Korver who hangs around the long ball line and shoots open shots. Well, if I'm fishing for fouls, the whistle's not going to blow every time I get fouled,
right?
Which leads me into bad shots, which goes down the efficiency road now. So when I'm shooting 9 for 24, I'm shooting 9 for 25, and I'm trying to get fouled on most of those shots, and I'm only getting half the whistles. I mean, I feel like that's a really inefficient way to play basketball. Don't get me wrong. I think that drawing fouls is a skill, no question about that. But I do feel like when I'm fishing for fouls, I can find myself in a lot of trouble, and it can really affect my game inefficiently.
Well, that's my struggle with what Justin said at the beginning when he said, well, threes are worth more than twos. That's an accurate statement. However, I know that 1% of 3-point shots get fouled on, 15% of within 0 to 6 feet get fouled. Well, who's more efficient? The guy who's shooting the three and making 35%, or the guy that's down low? Because not only does he get the basket and won 15% of the time, so if you calculate that, it's probably closer than just the direct 2 to 3 comparison, but also the strain it puts on the other team. Because once they start getting into fouls, maybe some of their best players have to sit. Like it completely changes. And that's why I asked you the question about the analytics and the gameplay, because people seem to. I love your site. Let's be clear. That you created. I know you're not there anymore, but I'm on it every single day. And people get teased sometimes when they're like, "You're a basketball reference guy." Like, there's a guy in our chat right now, Mars, who everyone's like, "You're a stat guy," or you get in debates and people are like, "Are you looking on Basketball Reference?" Well, yeah, I can't memorize every player's stats over the history of basketball. It's good that I have a place to go check and make sure that I'm right. That being said, we sometimes, because of all the stats that are now available, and I'm getting to a question here, I promise, we forget about the actual gameplay and the effects that certain things have, like fouls. So here's my question, because we didn't have these stats before. Now that we have, shooting percentages from 0 to 3 feet, 3 to 6, 6 to 10, 10 to whatever, to 16 to the 3-point line, and do you ever think that those things will become? You're welcome, Mars. Do you ever think those things will become part of the analytics where? Because right now we're not adjusting for, field goal percentage. Well, someone who shoots, most of his shots 0 to 6 feet is better have a higher field goal percentage than a guy who shoots 13 to 16 feet out. But we don't really adjust for that at all. Do you ever think someone's going to, big brain, you are going to go in and be like, okay, let's make a calculation that figures out how to put all of that in?
I think it's already been done. And I mean, just to be clear now, like I probably given the focus of my current work, I'm not as deep into the analytics world as I used to be. But I think I'm pretty sure there are metrics out there that do the sort of thing you're talking about, where you are making adjustments for the types of shots that are taken. So you're not just kind of, lumping all shots together and looking at something like effective field goal percentage or whatever, but you're trying to adjust for the fact that, like you said, like, okay, if I'm shooting near the rim, I better be shooting a high percentage. If and that sort of thing. So yeah, I know that's being done. It's just a question. I can't really point you to exactly to where.
Okay. Yeah, because I struggle because I look like I use Kevin Garnett as my example, right? Everyone's like, if he just took one step back, he would have scored, someone said, 8,500 more points. And I'm like, no. Because we actually have his data. I go, no, he shot like mid 40s, his percent from, I think, 16 feet to the 3-point line, and like below 27 from 3. Like there was just something about that extra step back. He actually was, I did the math, I go, he would actually scored less points. And they're like, oh. And so that's why I love that stuff, because that breakdown, and then it makes it even harder, because how do you compare it now? Pre-1998, we didn't have that data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that again goes back to the data limitations, right? In terms of making historical comparisons, right? Where you don't really have play-by-play until 96, 97 or so. So,
this is what I want to know on the effective field goal, because this is what my question was on that, though. Is like, okay, we'll use SGA this year, right? I think he's leading the league in points, and if not, I think he leads the league in total points or something like that. Well, anyways, let's make it up. Yeah, let's make that up. So let's say his effective field goal is better than someone's true shooting, right? Okay, but he takes 21 shots on the effective field goal and 8 free throw shots. So that's a mix of 3s and 2s. So he's better at 2/3 of the game in that regard, and then someone's better at free throws. So I'm saying, what is the advantage with that over there? Because like I'm a big, I brought him up earlier, but I'm a big Kobe Bryant wasn't that good of a shooter. You know what I mean? And people are like, look at his true shooting percentage. I go, I mean, a lot of players shoot a lot better when nobody's guarding them. You know what I mean? I can shoot 80-something from the line right now. I couldn't make a shot in the NBA, but if you put me at the line, I'll make 80-something.
I guess the question I'd ask would be this. Let's say you have 2 guys with the same effective field goal percentage, but one guy gets to the line twice as often as the other. Right? Like, so with effective field goal percentage, you are missing that important piece. I guess that would be the point I would try to make.
I got you.
Yeah, see, I feel like with field goal, your field goal and true shooting, I feel like they're trying to bulk those 3 things together. And I'm of the mindset that I feel like we should be separating it more apart. I feel like we should say 3s. Heck, there might even be a new definition for long 3s, because these guys keep shooting from the logo. And then it's like, okay, that mid-range, that short mid-range, and then post. Like, I almost feel like you want to break it up more, because to your point, Tony, there's different aspects to the game. Someone who gets to the line more, someone who shoots, I get to the line 10 times, but I shoot 60%. Well, I'd rather have the guy who only gets there 7 times and shoots 80%. So those, I feel like we're trying to bulk it together to make it easier for people who don't love basketball, I hate to say it, versus chopping it up more, because I'd rather see more data points than less, personally. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Am I crazy, Jay?
No, I don't think so. I think it should all be inclusive. When I think about playing in the mid-range, when I think about playing at the rim, when I think about playing in the mid-post, when I think about the analytics that Justin talks about and all of this stuff that's been added, that stuff gets taken away from the game. What I mean when I say that, Justin, I'm watching the Celtics last night, and I had to turn the game off because I watched Jaylen Brown get a rebound after a miss, and he's right there at the rim, and he could have laid the ball up. Instead, he fires it out to Drew Holiday at the long ball line. And I'm thinking to myself, this is where we are today. I feel like Joe Mazzulla, if he could, he'd shoot all 3s. I think that we're getting to that point, even though half his shots that he's shooting today with the Boston Celtics, I think they average 94 shots a game. Over 50 of them are 3s. Right. I think that's. I love it. I think that's where we're getting today, and the other aspects of the game are being phased out off the strength of this analytic, which is basic math. 3 is more than 2, even though not everybody in the league shoots 3s like that, and guys are a lot more effective in the mid-range, in the mid-post. And what it's also done is it's dragged big guys away from the basket, which is where they're the most effective. Now they're at the long ball line, and it's just turned into something completely different.
Yeah, going back to something you said earlier too about like true shooting percentage sort of being this catch-all, right? I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that in terms of, you know, if you want to use something on a broadcast or you have a radio show or a podcast or whatever, it can be really hard to talk about metrics that are sort of, what's the word I want to use? I don't know, difficult to calculate. You know what I mean? So a baseball example would be OPS, right? On base plus slugging. Well, we know there's lots of flaws with that measure, but in terms of presenting something to your audience that's sort of easy to grasp, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why something like true shooting percentage has become popular, is because if you just explain to somebody, this is just basically points per scoring attempt. It's easy to digest. And in terms of comparing player A to player B, it's not going to be perfect, but it's sort of like a gateway, I think, for people to talk about analytics, that sort of thing. So I don't think there's many people out there would say that, you know, serious data analysts would say it's like true shooting percentage is the be all end all. I mean, OPS in baseball now is kind of just frowned upon by most serious baseball analysts, but it's still used a lot. And I think it's a good way, again, to get somebody to at least start thinking that way.
What do you think? Because I've heard a lot of coaches knock this. What do you think of PER? Because I found something that goes with it, but I want to see what you think first. What do you think of PER? Do you think that's a good metric to use?
I mean, it's fine. There's probably lots of better measures out there. But again, it's kind of something that's really easy for people to understand, because if you tell them it's basically on the same scale as points per game, right? So a PER of 20 is really good. A player who scores 20 points per game is a pretty good score. You know, if you have a PER of 30, you're an MVP candidate. Again, if you're a 30-point per game scorer, you know, you're one of the best scorers in the league, that sort of thing. So I think, again, like in terms of trying to present something to a general audience, it's good. I would not rely on it like to make front office decisions. I would not use it like, for example, to rank players historically, that sort of thing. So I think it's good. It's not the best metric out there, though.
So as a guy who obviously loves, right, math and love watching basketball, do you think analytics has more helped or hurt the aesthetics of the game of basketball?
So yeah, I fear we're starting to head towards the hurting side of this a little bit. Again, like you were talking about earlier about the Celtics sort of going all in on 3-pointers, which is good, right? They should. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the NBA. But I do fear we've lost a little bit of balance in the game. I don't want to go back to the 90s. Like, I don't know if you guys were old enough to watch basketball in the 90s, but it was a slog at times.
Do you see the Grays? We're old enough. We're old enough.
So, you remember, like, those games weren't great. Now, think back to the 80s. So I sort of became an NBA fan in the 80s, and the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, like those were. I liked that style of play because it was fast. Probably did not shoot enough threes back then, but I enjoyed that style of play. So I don't want to go back to the 90s. It would be nice to get maybe a little bit more balance in the game. But, you know, if you're a team and your goal is to create an offense that's as efficient as possible, you kind of have to go that direction these days, unless they maybe, you know, change some rules or something like that to make it worth your time to sort of re-examine how you play.
Sure. I actually don't mind the long ball shooting, if I'm being honest with you, Justin, because I feel like the game has evolved. We got a bunch of guys that, you know, shoot the ball at a pretty efficient rate from there. I think the difference is that everybody thinks that they should be out at the long ball line, and everybody doesn't belong at the long ball line. And what it's now created, it's created a culture of, if you can't do that, then you can't play in today's game. And it completely eliminates a bunch of other guys who do a lot of other things. So if you can't shoot threes, then you can't be ineffective in today's game, which is just so not true. Because now what we got is we got a bunch of guys who shoot threes who shouldn't be shooting threes.
Yeah. Yeah. And when teams are making them, it's really fun to watch, right? And then you get situations like last night where the Lakers went, I think, 6 for 31 on 3-pointers last night and got blown out of the building, right? So it can lead to some really exciting games. It can also lead to some real clunkers. And I think what we've seen over the past few years here, past few seasons, is that it's obviously a higher variance shot. So when one team is hitting and another team is not, it can create some really extreme blowouts. And we've seen like the number of like 25 point, 30 point, 40 point blowouts as a percentage of all games. That's really gone up here the last, 6 to 7 seasons or so.
Yeah, I looked at the big blowouts last year, and you and I did it on our show, and we looked at them, and you could see the blowouts occurred when the teams that were shooting a bunch of threes had a bad game, right? And they weren't hitting a high percentage, blowout. Then the blowouts wins were, oh, look what happened. They shot a bunch of threes and they hit an abnormal high percentage, like not even for them, right? They shot 60% from three and they shot 40 of them. Yeah, you're going to blow that team out. It's interesting that you kind of brought that up about the 90s and 80s, because I always argue with people because they're like, they want to call me an old head because I'm old. But at the same time, when they ask me what's my favorite era, and I'm like, now, because this is the style of play that I play and that I enjoy. Mm-hmm. But you said something about, maybe not the 90s, but going back to the 80s. And I'm like, I'm kind of this hybrid where I like the 80s in the sense that there was pace to it. Let's eliminate the clotheslines, right? And maybe take those, 5 threes a game, make it 20, 25. And I think that's the happy medium, because they were still playing inside, outside. There were still teams like the Lakers who could play fast. There were other teams who still went in. Like you look at the Celtics with Bird wasn't a fast guy. And then they had McHale and Parrish down low. So they were still playing kind of inside, outside. So it allows you to have that blend. And I think, to your point, I think we've gotten too far to one side. And I'm hoping that it kind of course corrects and brings it back, because I think that's the happy medium, is kind of pace to the 80s with a little bit less threes than now, minus the clotheslines, because poor Kurt Rambis is still in pain.
Throwing guy.
I agree with you. That's pretty much how I feel about the state of the game. I really enjoy it, and I don't want to go back to the 90s. So,
Justin,
was
it that bad? Because you've said that 3 times. It was the 90s.
Well, go back and look at like some of the finals, and look at the scores of the games. It's one in particular. Was it the Spurs and the Knicks in 99?
99.
Yeah, like some of those games were they were ugly. Now that was a weird season anyway because of the lockout. But still,
my all-time favorite player in that series. Just to let you know, Justin.
Sorry.
That is my all-time favorite player in that series, just to let you know.
I'm going to guess Tim Duncan.
You're going to guess wrong. It's Larry Johnson. I am if we're talking stylistic, because I'm a 5'9" post player, I love short post players that can get it done. Like Dantley, people don't understand how good Dantley was. Dantley was like 6'4", averaging 30 in the post.
Oh yeah, and he had go on YouTube sometime if you've never seen Adrian Dantley. You guys probably have, but watch his free throw routine. It's great, where he kind of caresses the ball before he shoots it. Yeah,
you got it. You got to rub it.
But I think it's funny because you bring that up, and I think the misconception is we talk about the 90s as an ugly play style, which it was. However, they people equate that to like they're not being good basketball players. And that's the struggle I always fight, because I'm like, no, they were good, but because of the style of play, and I relate it to, I'm in Canada, so you'll appreciate it, you'll understand why I'm bringing up hockey. In the 90s, there was also a thing in hockey called the neutral zone trap, which made hockey unwatchable.
It was the Devils, right? That really
it was the that's right. Yeah. It was the Devils who started, and because everyone started to play that clutchy. Now they changed the rules, just like the NBA did, to say, hey, we got to eliminate this from the game because it's ugly. But it's not that the players couldn't play anymore. There was one coach or someone who threw in a system that figured out a way that, hey, I don't have, the high skilled guys, so I'm going to do this kind of thing. And then everybody had to adjust to it. Well, that's what the 90s was. I felt for basketball is you saw scoring go down every single year, and players were like, well, we got to put in, 3 7-footers who are going to get 18 fouls. And and it was, you're right. It was ugly. Doesn't mean those guys couldn't play. Tony, I think you have.
I was not trying to say. I think it was.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was the way they let them play. It wasn't really the players themselves. Like they were talented players. It's just, what they got away with on defense, compared to what they do now is, yeah.
I can play defense.
The two best players I've ever seen play was 95 Hakeem and 93 Jordan. So, I mean, I got a soft spot in the 90s because, I mean, those guys were amazing. And I have 95 Akeem over 93 Jordan, watching what Akeem did. Just a fun fact, for those that don't know, since you're a numbers guy, to beat a team with the top 4 records in the league and beat teams all 55 wins and up, beat all teams on the road, and beat somebody in every round playing at an all-NBA level that had won the MVP like the Rockets did in 95, that's a 1 in 645,000 chance. That's the odds on that. So that's why I say if we're talking great, what the word great is, not best, the 95 Rockets are the greatest team. Because if you can only do something 1 in 645,000 attempts, you know what I mean? You are the greatest team.
Well,
that.
part of that calculation is they were a really underachieving regular season team because weren't they a 6 seed that year? So
they were. We've had all kinds of teams had a chance to do the same thing and they couldn't do it. So that's where the great comes in. You know what I mean?
My point being that they really weren't a 6 seed. Like in terms of if you look at 6 seeds nowadays, like a team with Clyde Drexler and Akeem Olajuwon.
They underachieved.
Yeah.
They underachieved. Yeah. Well, it's like the Knicks. When I know it was a shortened strike season, but the Knicks being an 8 seed and going to the final, like if that was a full season, that Knicks team isn't an 8 seed, right? Like we get that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we hope so. But here's my question. This is my biggest question for you because this is actually how I found out about your website years ago. I was looking for Alvin Robertson stats, and that's how I came across Basketball Reference because I could never get a full picture on that because I would always try to tell people how good he was, and then nobody would listen to me. But here's what I want to know, because I'm big on the leaderboards and all that. How did you guys at first decide to go with the number 250, the top 250 in each category? Why not 300? Why not 200? Why not 5? Why not, what was 250? Why was it 250? And then how did you get the records to find everybody in the top 250 when you first started this up? Like, where did you go to get these numbers in this list?
Okay, so first 250.
We come to you. You had to get it from somewhere, right?
250 probably had something to do with how long we wanted the pages to be or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know why 250 versus 300. It's got to cut it off somewhere, right? You can't display 10,000 players or whatever. In terms of leaders, we're not like inputting what are the top seasons in steals per game. We are like what I was doing was I was collecting season totals for every single player in every single season. Once you have all that, you can calculate anything you want: steals per game, blocks per 48 minutes, whatever, right? And so what you have to start with is what I just said. You need all the totals for every player on every team.
Where did you get those?
So, yeah, good question. So a lot of it was manual data entry, going back and using old NBA guides or team media guides, things like that, and inputting it manually. Some of it. I mean, there were some tricks here and there that I used to sort of get some of the data, especially for like players who were current at the time I was working on putting the site together. But no, I didn't do it all manually too.
Listen, if you did any of it manually, that's crazy. So,
but yeah, no, there were portions of it that had to be done manually. There were pieces that I would not be able to find anywhere that I would have to dig out a book. And
so if you were doing some of that manually, right, that would mean that there was a possibility for human error.
Of course.
Has there been have we gone back with AI to? Actually, AI wouldn't even work either because they'd be wrong. To double check it,
no, yeah, I was.
Could we find an error? Could we find an error if we search hard enough?
I'm sure there's errors in there. Yeah, but here's the thing, right? So you can do certain things like, okay, I can go and get all the team totals, and I can triple check those. Once I'm confident those are 99.9% correct or whatever. Well, if I have all the player stats, they should add up to the team totals, right? So one of the things you can do is, see, is that happening? Do the numbers I have for the individual players, are they adding up to what we have for the team? If they're not, then you kind of have to dig in a little bit and see where are these differences coming from. Yeah, I mean, is it perfect? No, but I would argue that even what the Elias Sports Bureau has is not perfect. They like to present it as if it's perfection, but it's not. They have errors in their database, I know for sure.
I know that that's fine. You're not there anymore. If there's what other places, so like I look sometimes for stuff on Basketball Reference and I can't find the specific, whether it's game or stat that I'm looking for. Where else would you recommend, because you had to go find this stuff manually. So where else can you go check and find stuff?
So NBA.com has improved a lot over the years.
I deal with NBA.com a lot.
Yeah. The league sites, like it's just not even in just basketball, but just in general, football, baseball, the league sites are usually pretty good. And they have, because of sites like Baseball Reference, Basketball Reference, I think they've become a lot better in terms of, okay, we know that there's an interest in this historical data. We better get it on our site. So I would say, yeah, if you're having trouble finding something on Basketball Reference, NBA.com is a good place to start, because they do have a pretty good amount of historical data, although it can be hard to navigate at times, I feel like, because there's stuff there that I know is there, and sometimes I just don't know how to find it.
Now, to your point, Justin, we talked a little bit about, the NBA Finals in the 90s, like you just said. I mean, I think it was, I want to say game 4 of the 98 finals. I think the final score was 77-74 between the Jazz and the Bulls. Awful. 100%. If we're watching that today, it's like, get that out of here. That's not happening. I think the West Finals in 98, when Sean Elliott hit that shot, I think the final score was like 79-78. That was the first time the Spurs had the lead in the game when Sean Elliott hit that shot. So don't get me wrong, the game has definitely changed, and I'm very much a fan of the game turning into what it's turning into today. But there's things, while you're here, is that I'm just a little bit, unclear on, like the defensive rating. My defensive rating as an individual player and how that affects my unit. Can you go over that a little bit?
Sure. So, like the individual defensive rating you see in Basketball Reference, I would say that when you look at that number, you need to make sure you think in your mind, okay, there is a big error bar attached to this, because what that's doing is it's just looking at the team defensive rating. Okay. It's looking at then individually your defensive rebounds, your steals, your blocks. And we know these things, while they are decent measures, they also have some noise in them. For example, you could be a guy that gets a lot of steals, but you're a poor defender because you're taking too many risks, right? That sort of thing. Or you're, what's that?
Allen Iverson.
Yeah, well, yeah, Allen also had some size issues too that prevented him, I think, from being a really good defender. Or like a shot blocker who too often is going for shot fakes to get blocks, that sort of thing, right? So anyway, the individual defensive ratings, basically, if you play a lot of minutes for a team that has a good defense, you're going to have a really good individual defensive rating. And I think the thing is, it's just hard looking at like season level totals to sort of get an idea about how good of an individual defender you are. And then the thing is too, right, if you're a good one-on-one defender, let's pick like somebody like Michael Cooper from the 80s Lakers, right, who always had a reputation as being a really good individual defensive player.
Sure.
He wasn't a guy who was a great rebounder, and he didn't get a lot of steals necessarily, a lot of blocks. And so if you're not sort of getting those few stats that are tracked on the defensive end, on your resume, your defensive rating might not be as good, or might not suggest you are as good defensively as you really are.
That's what I was thinking. That part right there is what I was thinking, because if you just because we got a lot of, because of Basketball Reference, we got a lot of box score watches, right? We got a lot of people who determine how good a player is strictly off the box score. Strictly off the box
I think like with the tracking data that we have nowadays, where where all 10 guys are on the court at any time, right. I'm sure teams have developed much more sophisticated methods to measure individual defense. But yeah, just using season level totals, I think individual defense.
Because I've seen guys like Hassan Whiteside who had empty games where he had 12, 13 rebounds, and it just didn't look effective at all. While watching the game, it didn't look like it affected the game.
Right. He's a good rebounder, good shot blocker, but one-on-one in the post, he might not be that good. Yeah.
No, he's not. Not at all.
Well, he was hunting blocks too. He was getting out of defensive position to try to hunt blocks as well.
Right, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about, just because you block a lot of shots doesn't make you necessarily a good shot defender.
Wemby, for example.
All right, we got a question from one of our watchers here, Ori B of Hoop Social. So we're going to bring him up to ask his question. Ori, how you doing?
Hey guys, how you doing today?
We're good. We're good.
Good. I just want to say hi first and foremost. Nice to meet you. Big fan. You're right on the homepage of my analysis every single day. It is Basketball Reference and everything else. But I was curious, with the reliance on analytics in the game now and the addition of AI, like how is Basketball Reference like evolving its data collection methods and trying to keep up with this new, analytics driven game?
Unfortunately, I am not the person to ask because I don't work for the site anymore.
Fair
so I wouldn't be able to speak intelligently on that because I don't know how they've changed things internally to sort of adjust for the larger amount of data that's now being generated.
Well, what about stats in general? So maybe
Sure.
not specific to that site. What about just in general?
I'm sorry. What in general?
I say so, not maybe specifically Basketball Reference in general, but you still pull up like game stats and that type of thing. So how has AI kind of affected just all of this data collection?
I don't know. I mean, I like artificial intelligence is not really like an area of expertise for me. So I would hate to talk.
How do you do your post game? Are you doing it manually on Statitudes?
Oh, like in terms of like digging through and figuring out like milestones and that sort of thing. Oh no, I mean like I write scripts that will go through. Like I don't do this all. I don't look through every box score and then like write down notes like on a notepad or anything like that. I have scripts that I write that'll say, okay, like this player reached 15,000 points last night. This player reached 10,000 rebounds. This player had a 50-point game, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's definitely something that I'm not doing with my eyeballs. I am, getting the box score data, putting it all in my database, and then running scripts that'll go through and sort of pull out these notable things that have happened.
Justin,
I guess if you want to call that artificial intelligence, okay, yeah, that's fine.
That's right there. I mean, using computing to do that. I mean, absolutely.
Question, Justin, because again, I'm thinking about the numbers, and a numbers darling is Russell Westbrook. Because if you think about his numbers, but on the flip side to that, his efficiency isn't very good. So when I think about him, like how is he going to be looked at, considering what he compiled as a player, yet he wasn't as efficient as a scorer, as a three-point shooter, as a distributor. Yet he's going to, at the end of the season, he'll probably end up in the 10,000 assist club and in the 25,000 point club with James. That's it. Nobody else has done that. But he's not very efficient as a scorer because he never really shot over 45% for his career as a scorer, and as a long ball shooter, he wasn't very efficient. I mean, how does that make Russell Westbrook, a guy who's compiled all these stats, how does that make him look?
I mean, I think it depends who you're talking to, right? Like, I think definitely his triple-double totals, which now he has, 200 in his career, I think they overstate the impact he's had on the game. And I feel like, especially at times, he is hunting triple-doubles rather than necessarily doing the things necessary to help his team win the game. And that's not to say I think he's a bad player necessarily. I don't think he's a really good player nowadays, but I think he's not quite as good as his all-time triple doubles record might suggest, and he's not quite as bad as some of his detractors say. But like you said, there is an issue that he really couldn't shoot, especially on from three-point range, and B, he committed a lot of turnovers.
He was a turnover machine, 100%. He was. No doubt about that.
So, like, in terms of like where I would put him in history, I don't like. He was on this 75th anniversary team, I believe. I wouldn't have put him on that team. But he's a really good player. Obviously, I just don't think.
Oh, I was going to say, can we put it in terms like this? If there was a championship-winning team with Russell Westbrook on it, what role should he play? The third best player, the second best player, the fourth best? Where do you think that would fit in?
You talking about when he was at his best or now?
No, I'm talking about when at his best. If Russell Westbrook to win a title, what role should he be in?
He could have been the second or third best player on a championship team. I mean, if you look at the Thunder, they advanced to the NBA Finals, and you would argue probably that he was second in line behind Durant on that team.
I have to run, so I'm going to end with the most important question. I'm going to ask a stat person who knows that manually inputting stats creates human error. Did Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points?
Please tell him, Justin. Please, because I got to deal with this every day with this dude. First and foremost, he doesn't even think Chamberlain is a real person.
He's a myth.
There. Okay,
He's a
he doesn't
myth.
think
It's a
Chamberlain is real.
conspiracy. He thinks it's a conspiracy.
He doesn't even think Chamberlain
Mount
is a real
Olympus
person.
is real. I'm Greek. Listen, Mount Olympus is real.
He doesn't think that forget Chamberlain scoring 100 points. He's not even sure if the game really happened.
His name was
That's
George
what we
Marcus.
are.
No, that's not true.
So this is what I got to deal with.
Stop.
I believe it happened. Yes, I believe it happened.
You believe it happened just clean, fresh. It just happened. No conversations. It was natural and organic.
I believe so. Yes.
Justin, we can't believe a word that you say. I'm sorry.
Yo, well, I think this was good. I enjoyed this, no doubt about it, because I definitely got some good insight. I still am a little more clueless about what box plus minus actually means. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help you out there.
Thank you very much, but
Can
I got a better idea.
Can you reach out to John and ask him for us? Maybe send us a
please.
message, a text.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
That'd be great. That would definitely be great. So, Justin, thank you very much for being here. We definitely appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, my man. Thank you very
also,
much.
too, plug Statitudes again. Tell people what it is, what they should check out, why they should go there.
Yeah, sure. So I have a Substack. It's located at statitudes.com. You can see the URL scrolling there. It's
Is that correct? I hope that's correct.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, statitudes.com. And so basically what I do is every morning I summarize, like I said earlier, the notable things that happened in the previous night's games. What players reached particular milestones, what players have active notable streaks that are going, that sort of thing. So yeah, if you're interested in that sort of thing, sort of a daily statistical recap of what happened in the NBA, please sign up.
I just I subscribed. So go put in your email address, subscribe.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Love it.
Hey, I want to say this too. If you ever want it, and you can let me know. I've been working on this formula. I call it the conducive to winning formula. You want to add that on Statitudes, and help me work on it. That's great, because I'm always trying to figure out, what really just by the numbers, what says you're more conducive to winning.
I can tell you. You don't even need that. I'll tell you right now. The team that scores the most points wins 100% of the games.
That happens
right,
every
but
time.
what are the factors
not every
do
time. That happens every time. Not most of the time.
Hey, well, you remember that Doug Collins call years ago? He said, I believe it was the Sixers. I forget which team, but he said they almost always win 100% of the time when they score over 100 and they hold their opponents under 100. So Doug Collins did say that. They win almost every time.
And that does work. So
that makes sense.
That's what we can find you at. That's definitely what we can find you at, though. So
all right, guys.
Thank you,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Absolutely, Justin. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that. We'll check y'all later.
Later.
Okay.